Thank you. Welcome everybody to the California Community Foundation in downtown Los Angeles. We're happy to have all of you who are here from out of town. I want to take a few minutes, hopefully not 20, to talk a little bit about the work of the Community Coalition and hopefully lend some of our experience to your discussion today in a way that's useful for the things you're trying to think about. Traditionally in community organizing, at least during the history that I've been involved in community organizing, traditionally the focus has been on policy wins, right? So it's very much, at the Community Coalition in the early days, it was this liquor store on the corner contributes, not only does it contribute to addiction, it harbors sex trafficking, and it harbors illegal drug trafficking, which eventually turns into violence, which eventually turns into homicide, right? So you have a whole system set up to support and encourage behaviors that are deleterious to health. And so a community organizing approach, or our approach, was everybody who's affected by that, most affected by that, mainly the people who live around the site, the people who have to drive by the site, children and families who have to walk by it to go to school, and families who are losing members of their family to what's going on at that liquor store. You get all those people involved, and really we were measuring it by the number and intensity of people that you could get involved, because we said, well, if you get 25 people with really great stories, that's not as good as 50 people with really awesome stories, right? And somewhere in there was what we would call the tipping point that would swing forces in our favor. The city would swoop in, enforce the laws that it was already had on the books, and it would close the liquor store. And we evaluate our work. We show up to a place like this and we'd say, we closed 200 liquor stores, which is great. And we'd even go further, because there's always the push from the foundations and academics and the media to say, well, really quantify your work. So we'll say, in addition to closing 200 liquor stores, Los Angeles Police Department tells us that within a half-mile radius of every store that we've closed, violent crime calls have decreased by 30%. So that's hard, real data, and it's the police, so it's not even, it's not even us, right? So that's real, and so we would put that forward as the best part of our work. The literature started to change, and Manuel Pastor, who works closely with a lot of the organizing groups here in California, started talking to us about the community building aspects of organizing. And we happened to go through a strategic planning process in our organization where we involved the membership. And we brought the members together and we said, tell us what your experience has been with Community Coalition and what you would like your experience to be going forward. And of course, we're expecting people to say, and they do, I had that liquor store down the street from my house and I couldn't sleep at night because there was always fights and people in the alley and all the drama. And now, I can walk my dog at 11 o'clock at night and it's great. And people said that. But what people were very clear was more important to them than the actual material change was the process of developing the change or creating the change. It was someone knocked on my door and I came to a meeting and I met my neighbors. And we all went together to this hearing. And we had the best lunch together after the hearing was over. And one time a resident was telling the story, I was like, you do remember that we lost that hearing, right? And they say, yeah, but it eventually all came together. And so what we learned from that and how we changed our work, and I'll give a short example of how we changed our work. What we changed our work is we started to emphasize the community building aspect as much as we emphasize the policy aspect, right? Because a lot of times people can change their conditions without the permission of the state or the government, right? People could decide, we're going to close the liquor store just by parking our cars around it and having a fruit stand in the parking lot. And we know if we have a vegetable and fruit stand, all the seniors will come up to buy fruits and vegetables at the liquor store, and the normal stuff that goes on there people suddenly won't want to do. And you don't need permission from anybody to do that. We just need to, we can just go and do it. So we pursued a campaign around Martin Luther King Park, which is a park in South Los Angeles that was, one, marred by violence, but also was surrounded by liquor stores, pawn shops, and motels that rent rooms by the hour. And in Los Angeles, we have a whole swath of geography that have motels that rent by the hour that are specifically to facilitate sex trafficking. And so this park was just, this park was the focal point of all the activity because it was abutted by these other land uses. And so we, with the Advancement Project, did a survey and we asked people, tell us about your neighborhood, tell us about the safe parts of your neighborhood, tell us about the dangerous parts of your neighborhood, and give us some stories. People said the park was by far the most dangerous part of the neighborhood. And in fact, when we're coming home, we take a circuitous route home so we don't have to pass by the park. So we go through a process and say, well, what could be done to make the park safer? And people were like, there's nothing we can do. But, in keeping with our finding, people were still willing to come to meetings, even though they didn't think there was anything that could really be done, certainly not anything that could be done for the long term. So we kept meeting, and we had tested out some theories in other neighborhoods, and we knew that if you bring a lot of activity into a public space, that it drives out a lot of the negative activity. So we undertook this at the park. So we got a ballet class set up, and we got a chess league set up, and we got a video game league, and we got someone to come teach boxing, and we got a little league baseball, and we got a basketball league, and we got a tennis league. And just activity after activity after activity, things that in middle-class communities people pay for, we got them offered for free at the park. Before you know it, a summer passes, and the park is completely full all the time with everyday people doing everyday things together. Obviously, the crime rate and the violence and the feelings of danger go down dramatically, right? That happens. But what's more important about that than any work that we've done heretofore is when we stopped organizing there on a day-to-day basis, and by that I mean having 2 or 3 organizers assigned to that neighborhood where they're knocking on doors every day, going to neighborhood meetings every night, having block parties on the weekend, all that, we could pull back from that neighborhood, and much of the activity, not all of it, much of the activity continues to go. And people continue to work together and continue to build community so that now we have a big fair there every year. Hundreds and thousands of people come to the fair. And again, what residents say is that the benefits are there are multiple dimensions of the benefit. One, people feel safer, and there is real safety, so there's a decline in violent activity. Second, suddenly a neighborhood where I didn't walk, I now walk. Kids who, and this is to me the part of it that's the most hopeful and the most promising, 12-year-old kids would say, I've lived across the street from this park my whole life. I would look out my window at the park and I would ask my parents to go, and they would never let me go. And now I come here every day. And so for them, that is really meaningful because they understand now, like, when I find a situation that is undesirable, I don't have to accept the situation. And I'm learning this at 12. No matter how intractable the situation looks, I don't have to accept it. Something can be done about it if I get with other people who feel the same way and try to create a different reality. And lastly, now that the liquor store owner sees that, there are regular people in this neighborhood who like to do regular things, maybe I should transform my liquor store into a fresh fruit and vegetable store, and if you guys help me, I'm willing to do that, right? Which is a much better scenario than driving the liquor store owner out of business through the force of the state. So that's, one example at King Park that we've done that we think is instructive in this process of learning that building community is as beneficial, if not more beneficial, than changing policy.
Okay, great. Thank you. So next up is Phyllis Hill, who's the lead organizer for Isaiah in Minnesota.